This video is about the trace minerals. Iron's the first one we'll talk about. Iron is really important for many reasons within the human body. Some of its key functions are related to the interaction with hemoglobin and myoglobin. So hemoglobin and myoglobin are proteins, and iron is an integral part to that protein. Hemoglobin carries oxygen to cells, except in the muscle we call it myoglobin, and it's also carrying oxygen. Iron is also involved in being able to generate energy in the body. So it does this through what we call cellular energy metabolism. So there's a process within the cells that helps to generate energy, or ATP, and iron is a key component of that being able to happen. Other important things about iron are thinking about when we consume food, what are some things in food that can either enhance its absorption or might decrease its absorption. So we consider these, and specifically we consider these in the context of non-heme iron. So you might recall that heme iron is a type of iron that's found in animal flesh, so it would be in the muscle of the animal. Whereas non-heme iron is what's found in any type of, it can be found in animal sources, but it's also found in plant sources. So things like grains and vegetables and dairy are going to have non-heme iron. Again, meats can have non-heme iron as well, but only the meats or the animal flesh like beef and chicken and fish are going to have heme iron. When we talk about non-heme iron, it's just in a different form than heme iron, and it's not as easily absorbable. However, there are things we can do to enhance its absorption, including consumption of vitamin C, and then also within in the meats, we have a special compound called meat, fish, and poultry factor, and that actually enhances non-heme iron absorption. What are things that can actually inhibit its absorption? So tannins that are found in tea can lower absorption of non-heme iron. There's also oxalates, which are found in the foods listed here, and phytates. All of these can lead to decreased absorption of non-heme iron. And I mentioned this in the calcium part, that if you have high doses of any of some of these minerals like calcium, zinc, iron, or copper, they can compete for absorption in the small intestine. I would really encourage you to practice the Canvas activities. So there is an animation you can watch, and then also there are questions in the test your knowledge section. So pay particular close attention to those, and not just for iron, but for the test your knowledge or for all the minerals. So I encourage you to do those activities. What about zinc? Zinc is also critical in the body. Specifically, it's related to gene expression. So it interacts with the DNA in the cell, and it can lead to growth. It leads to certain types of taste perceptions. It's important for wound healing and for sperm production. And as I mentioned at the bottom here, that really it interacts with over 100 enzymes in the human body, so it becomes very critical in many pathways. Where can you get zinc? Protein-containing foods are a great source of zinc, so things like meat, shellfish, poultry, milk products. What happens if you don't get enough? We do know that, especially in countries where depending on what they're consuming, they may not be getting enough zinc. We really don't see this in the United States very often, but we do see it still in some countries outside of the US. So with the zinc deficiency, it can lead to poor growth, especially we'd see this in children would be the highest concern. Can lead to delayed sexual maturation, again, seeing that is something that would happen during the puberty period of life stage. And then also it can decrease immunity. Now that can be an effect throughout a person's life. Iodine. The main function of iodine is really with thyroid hormones, and those are there to regulate our basal metabolism. Where do we get iodine? A great source is seafood, but it's important to know that sea salt is not a naturally occurring source of iodine. It has to be fortified. But seafood itself is a high iodine source. You can also get iodine in fast foods, thinking about using salt, which is where we fortify salt with iodine, and baked foods, use dough conditioners that are high in iodine, and milk. Some of this can be coming from how the teats on the cow are being cleaned and what that gets into the milk. And then, of course, iodized salt. So in the United States, we iodize salt, but you can buy plain salt as well. That might be used by some in canning purposes, but we can buy iodized salt if in the United States in order to get iodine in our diet, especially if we're not getting exposed to other foods very much, like seafood, where we might be landlocked. What happens with the iodine deficiency? This image for your book is showing that what's happening is the thyroid gland is actually enlarging, and the cells are enlarging in a way to try to capture more iodine. This is actually called goiter. So this is showing a woman who has goiter. Of course, it can happen to both men and women, and outpouching on the neck where the thyroid gland is. If a woman who is pregnant has an iodine deficiency, it actually can lead to poor development within the baby, and it can lead to mental disability in the child, and this is called cretinism. So again, a child who is an offspring of a mother who had iodine deficiency can lead to that child having cretinism. Fluoride. Fluoride, you might know, it can be found in water, a water supply. Here locally in Provo, we do not have fluoridated water in our water supply. I think it's important to note that these are highly regulated through the Environmental Protection Agency, and they are set at optimal levels in water to help to promote healthy teeth. So it strengthens tooth enamel, which then can help to prevent getting cavities or dental caries. And part of this is that it's protecting the teeth from any kind of acid. So we know that when we consume foods with carbohydrates, we have bacteria in our mouth, and those bacteria can break down the carbohydrate, and part of a byproduct is acid. That acid can then wear down the enamel. Well, fluoride really helps our teeth to become especially strong and helps to strengthen the tooth enamel to prevent them from decaying from acid exposure. You can get too much fluoride. So too much fluoride can lead to discoloration of the teeth. Now, this really isn't harmful, but it can be aesthetically unpleasing. So there is a concern of getting too much, but like I mentioned, what's in the water supply really is highly regulated to be able to ensure people aren't getting too much. Selenium is our last trace mineral that we'll talk about in this class. And for selenium, we're just going to talk about its major function. And it serves as an antioxidant, and it serves as part of an antioxidant enzyme system. So if you remember, in the vitamin section, we talked about 3 antioxidants: vitamins A, specifically beta-carotene, vitamin C, and vitamin E. Selenium works hand in hand with vitamin E, and therefore helps to serve as part of this antioxidant system. This is just a brief overview of thinking about how this occurs. So we have what are called peroxides, which are naturally occurring compounds in our body, and they actually can lead to free radical production. And we talked about free radicals earlier in this term, that it then can lead to cellular damage, so cellular tissue damage. What can happen, though, is we can have an enzyme that is occurring in the body that's there that contains selenium. It's called glutathione peroxidase, and this can actually help to stabilize these peroxides, making them a stable molecule. And in this case, like this is telling here, we can spare the use of vitamin E as an antioxidant and instead use selenium. If you have any questions about the trace minerals, definitely ask me or the TAs.